We are so fortunate to be one of your partners, and the entire Winter Haven Chamber and all the businesses and organizations. You know, we have watched all of you grow. We have watched the development and changes from Certipay's lens, and we're really excited to be here as well. So thank you so much for having us. And so just like Katie said, this is such a great question because it will affect all of us, and it will most likely be just the beginning of some changes that we'll see on a federal level. So getting Florida accustomed to the change now is going to give us an edge. So moving on from there, if you have any comments or questions and you want to add them in the chat, you can find that chat box if you scroll to the top or bottom of your screen and look for the word more and then click on the word chat. That will open the Zoom group chat, and both Katie and I will be keeping an eye on that chat box. So please, if you have questions, drop them in there and we will make sure we answer everything by the end. So what we're going to talk about today, we were going to talk about what is the increase and when, some pros and cons that we typically see with rate increases and wage changes, and then some additional benefits that are kind of the byproduct of the change, and what do we need to do to prepare? So that's what's coming. All right, guys, everybody good? Are you ready? Okay, so the snapshot. Our current minimum wage in Florida is $8.65 an hour. And what that means is anybody who works overtime over 40 hours in a week, you have to pay them time and a half for overtime. That's what the whole point of having a minimum wage, and then that overtime number at time and a half. So something to pay attention to. Now, the change is an incremental change getting us to $15 an hour. And it starts this year on September 30th. So it doesn't start October 1st. It's September 30th is the first day of the change. And we're going to go to the $10 an hour minimum number. So that's the first jump that's coming. And I have in here our federal contractor change because this just passed the other day by executive order. So not only do we have this incremental change getting us to the $15 an hour mark, but also January 30th of 2022, so that's next January, the federal contractors, the minimum wage is going to go up from 10 and change where it is now to $15 an hour. I just threw that in there just in case if there are any of our federal contractors out there, or if you hire federal contract employees, whatever it is, that minimum wage number is also changing January 30th. But going back to our step change, so then on September 30th, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, $1 a year up until we get to that 15 number. So this is what it looks like. And then after that, it will fall into an annual inflation adjustment. So we're going to get up to that 15 number and then go to the annual adjustment after that. And I've had people say, oh my gosh, 15, it's a huge number. It's all this and that. But if we had been following the annual inflation adjustments since 2006, then we would be around $25 an hour right now. So this is a nice little happy medium for us. So we got the timeline. So let's talk about some pros. There were a lot of great things that actually could happen. What happens here is when you are now paying more money, you've got more money in the pockets of the people who are going to spend the money. So this is actually a boost to the economy because people are going to buy more goods and services. So this, you know, a lot of people think right away that it's going to be a negative, but really these pros are a big deal. So a potential boost to the economy because now people have more to spend. And there could potentially be more jobs because now you've got people spending more money, buying more goods, buying more services. So that could in turn create more jobs. And so you've got to continue to adjust to the change in the economy. There's a stimulation that happens when the purchasing power goes up. And then you've got the demand increases. So more jobs, more things are changing and growing. So some good things there. Now you're actually helping employees and their families. So you might see a boost because now they've got the extra money to buy new glasses for their second grader, or now they've got the extra money to go do things that they may have been waiting on. Instead of just having one pair of school shoes, they can now have school shoes and tennis shoes. And so there are a lot of things that are changing because of the extra dollars in their pockets. And this goes back to boosting the economy. So these are some big pros. There are some cons. You even may need to increase your own prices, but we may see some other prices around that are getting a bump. The products and services that we see, trying to kind of balance out the change or compensate for the change. And we're going to talk about that more in a minute, because it may not be there may not be as high a cost bumps as you might think initially, but that could be a negative right there. There could be a stalled job market. I said the pro is more jobs. However, initially people think, okay, we're going to do a hiring freeze because we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know the impact. So there could be a little bit of a stall in the job market because businesses are gun shy, or, they're afraid to continue adding physicians until they know how it's going to stabilize. So that's something that historically, when we know there's a wage increase, we see a job freeze simultaneously. So it's something that historically we know happens, but historically we also know that there will be more jobs posted after. So kind of a con, but might not be too bad if you know it's coming. Or even if you know that you're one of the people who might do that, maybe you won't do a hiring freeze once you look at the numbers, which we're going to get to that too. And more outsourcing. So what people might do is say, instead of hiring these people on at the higher rate, I am just going to outsource the employees and pay for projects that I need when I need it. So that's another thing that we could see. How are we doing? Good? Pros and cons? All right, let's keep going. So some really interesting things do happen as a result of wage increases, and these are our benefits and kind of the byproducts of some of the changes that we see. So one thing that happens is a job satisfaction piece. People are really content and happy in their role because they're getting more money. And then what happens is we see higher levels of collaboration. We see more creativity and more communication. And so when people are more connected and content in their job, those are the kinds of things that we see. So it's a really nice change and a byproduct of that. Loyalty. This is another place where when people are satisfied with their pay, they are more likely to stay. So you're going to see the people who see the dollar amount and then they think, well, I'm not going to go anywhere because I'm content in this amount of money and I'm satisfied with that pay. And then we're going to talk again in just a little bit about turnover. So when you get people to stay, that is money back in your pocket. Turnover is so expensive. So creating this little bit of loyalty here in the job satisfaction, these are really big factors. Motivation. So employees who are more motivated because they've got these satisfaction pieces, they're going to work harder. They're going to meet the expectations. They want to keep this job. They want to be there. And so it kicks them into another gear where they're really motivated to be successful in their role. And so that's another great thing. The performance piece is a really big piece. Again, historically, we see all of these patterns and these things happen. But what might happen is your employees may have two jobs to make ends meet. And if they're making more money, at your organization, they're going to get rid of that extra job that they have. So now they're going to be more rested. They're going to have more focus. They're going to be able to perform better. And then again, all these other pieces, they'll be more motivated because they've got better focus, and then the results are better, and then that increases their motivation. They're going to be loyal. All of these things historically are byproducts of wage changes. So for me, that's a really exciting piece of what we know can be right around the corner. Questions? Good.
Rachel, I have a question for you. And a lot of what you've said is true with wage increases, but of course, these wage increases would be across the board. So all employers would technically be paying $10, at least $10 come September 30th. We have seen some people kind of leap ahead on that. For example, there's a medical group here in town that is now marketing that their starting wage is $13 an hour, or of course you have Disney that's at $15 an hour and that sort of thing. So those things make sense when it comes to people that are paying above the minimum wage. But historically, is there, when we see minimum wage increases, is there kind of a bubble where this exists and then people just get used to that being what it is and these things kind of fall by the wayside? I guess maybe I'm a little devil's advocate on it a little bit, because when everybody ends up paying this amount.
So these benefits are specific to wage increases across the board. So, this is not a separate benefit byproduct to just somebody who's paying more. And so I'm going to speak specifically to this ripple effect that you're kind of speaking to. In just a bit, we're going to talk more about it, but you're absolutely right. I think the initial idea is, wow, we've got these big changes. What is it going to look like? And then it'll level out. But when you look at some of these benefits on this slide here, what you see, these things apply because the individual person has more money. It's not because, it's not necessarily because of the comparison, but the individual. And so the performance, those pieces, like if they're making, $15 an hour, and before when they were making $8 an hour, they needed 2 jobs to do that. So this person now only needs that 1 job, and they're going to know that your company is the one they wanted to be with, and they're going to dedicate their time and energy to you. And you see that increase in focus. And, so many things improve when we make these kinds of adjustments, that these other things are going to happen individually to your employees. So it is what I am speaking to are the byproducts specifically to this kind of a wage adjustment across the board. And so, and it doesn't necessarily level out because the change is moving to another direction. Now, when we look at the original grid and you see, going to our timeline, once we get to this 2027 where you're starting to make annual inflation adjustments, that's where you might see kind of a leveling out, because now you've got the cost of living is catching up to where the wage was. And so you might see situations where people are, okay, I need more money again. And so adding in the second job or, whatever it is. So seeing a kind of a level out or the bubble change or whatnot, I don't think we're going to see that for a little bit, but we may see it in 2027 if the cost of living catches up to where we are. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and that is such a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. So what do we need to do? When we take a look at this, we definitely have some work to do here. So I broke it down into these 4 steps. First of all, what are you looking at? Prepare a budget for this increase. Go through and make sure you know how it's going to look for you. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. So analyze your existing wages. Where are you? And I say create a list, but maybe you even start with just do a list of all of your employees, their position, and then rate, have them list their wage in terms of low to high and hourly rate or whatever it is. So you can just kind of see how many people are there below the $10 an hour minimum, and what does that look like. So when we talk about the ripple effect, as I mentioned, you have two different ripple effects that occur. So think dropping a stone in a pond, and you can see the waves go out, and as they start to move, they decrease in size until they dissipate, right? So when this ripple effect occurs internally, you have the people on the current minimum wage numbers or at that wage bottom are going to get bumped to that $10 number. Now, who else is there between that number and 10? Do you have somebody at $9 an hour? Do you have a shift leader at $9.50? Where are the other people? So this is where you really need to do some work. So if you categorize your positions in terms of pay, like this will be the entry-level people, this will be the shift leaders and whatnot, that ripple is what is the distance between each change? So if your new wage bottom is $10, where's the next level? Is it $10.50? And then where's the next level from there? Most of the time, because these ripples get smaller and smaller, you're not going to go to 11, matching the distance between 10 and 10.50. You might go the next level to 10.75. And then from there, you might go to 10.95. And then so gradually, the amount between each one will get smaller and smaller. And when we have wage increases like this across the board, what we typically see is that ripple effect dissipates right around middle management. So you may not have to increase everybody in your company. So if you look at that ripple effect, you want to kind of balance it out at the point when it makes sense. You want to be careful so that you don't have your middle management people making the same or too close to those numbers of your entry level and the less experienced folks who come in. Does that make sense there? So the other ripple effect that happens actually occurs business to business. So there may be some businesses who are trying to pay a little bit more to get an edge or get higher quality employees. So this is another ripple effect that we could see. So if you are kind of the wage leader in your vertical where your reputation is you pay a little bit more than your competition, then that could push you up as well. So be mindful of that. While the concept could be this levels the playing field, it doesn't always. You may already be at a higher range in that $10 range, and having your wage increments go from there. So you may not need to make adjustments based on the minimum wage change, but you might want to make some of these adjustments to stay ahead of your competition. Things to think about. Does that all make sense? Okay. So before I move on, going back to creating a list, that's going to be an important place to start. And then it'll start to give you information about what your specific increase is going to look like. You can start to crunch some numbers, put it in a grid, and do some math. If you change this, what does it look like for you in a dollar amount per week, per month, per quarter, per year? Step 2, audit your expenses. So audit all of your expenses. And this is where you can balance out your numbers. So you know how much it's going to cost you when you make this change, and each of these ripples, when you have this number in your head, so you know you've got to go find it. So that of course, you still want to be profitable, and keep that in the back of your mind. You know that the economy is going to churn a little bit here. So it'll take a bit for that piece of it to catch up, but keep that in the back of your mind because that's going to help balance this out. And so take a look at all of your expenses. Where can you find some dollars to trade? And this is kind of an important place to look because there may be some things you can do to streamline some of your processes. Do you have technology every place that you can add technology? I can't stress enough how important adding technology is right now. If you're using old school spreadsheets and your time is written in handwritten time grids or all of these pieces, add some technology there. It saves you huge amounts of time. And then you can trade that time for something else or use those dollars for something else. Outsource any admin functions you can, human resource functions, payroll functions, #Certipay, or any of the functions, accounting functions, things that you can outsource that save you time, that save you dollars. Or take a look at how much something costs you versus if you outsource, how much does that cost you? And at least consider if that would be a place where you can trade these dollars. So another thing that you want to do here is think about the turnover numbers. So when I talked about it before, where these changes, you're going to have people who are more loyal and they're going to be more engaged and inclined to stay. That is critical. Right now, you want to pay attention to the employees you hire in the first place. Make sure you get it right. Get good employees. Make sure the employees you hire match your company's culture. And if you have to take maybe a less experienced person who matches your culture, you're better off than an experienced person who doesn't match your culture because that person won't stay. So pay close attention to reducing your turnover numbers. Again, this is critical. Turnover is extremely expensive. It will cost you thousands of dollars if you've got high turnover. And if you need help with this, again, go back to that other point. Get some outsourcing help, get some HR help to look at turnover and take steps to reduce the turnover. And getting the right people in the first place is one key factor to doing that. And that can save you a lot of money. Reducing turnover can result in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings because you are keeping employees and your employees are engaged. Step 3, this is where you are going to roll up your sleeves a little bit. So the first thing you want to do is maybe update your job descriptions, and not just the job description, but here's where you're going to take a look at maybe analyzing the job function itself, meaning what actually has to happen in this job for it to function properly. Also, evaluate the job for value. In an evaluation process of a particular job, you're really assessing where is the value in this job for your business objectives. So you want to take a close look at all 3 of these things. Each one is different. Your job description is exactly what does the individual need to do in this job. Your job analysis is what has to happen in order for this job to work, and what tasks have to happen in order for this job to function. And then the evaluation is what is the value this job brings to the organization. And make sure all of those things are aligned with your goals. And so now you might look at kind of making some changes. Do you have 3 jobs that have similarities? Can you combine them into 2 jobs? Or do you need to change some things there a little bit to make a difference? Do you have a job where you maybe have only put entry-level individuals in there because of the pay rate? So you've got, $8.65 an hour or $9 an hour, and that's an entry-level person. Well, now we're going to $10, $11, $12, $13 an hour. Do you need to change the job description so that maybe instead of having entry-level people, maybe you only hire people with a little bit of experience, and then that kind of justifies the difference in wage. If you still have to have those entry-level people, or there just aren't trained people and you've got to train them, it makes sense to look at kind of a training program where you would go into the entry level and then move through that as you learned. So there are some things there to really look at and pay attention to. So once you have your list and you've got all your job descriptions updated and matching your company goals and the strategic plan here, you've got to notify the people who will be affected by this. So don't just make the change in payroll and move on. Have a conversation with them. Let them know this is the change. This is what it looks like for you. This is your new job description. We're super excited you're here. We hope this is going to be a great thing. And then maybe you have personal action forms or change notice forms, whatever it is, you know, complete your forms, get that done ahead of time. Hopefully you've got this all electronic at this point in 2021. So get your change forms ready to go with the effective date of September 30th, or whenever you're ready. You can roll with it at any point. And again, you know, thinking about that competitive edge a little bit, if you make the change now, then you get that nice grip on employees where they really start to feel engaged and confident. So, you know, you don't have to do it early, but just some things to think about what could happen if you do it early. If you have a wage scale where certain positions have an increase that matches a timeline or a skills line or whatever it is, then make sure you update that wage increase scale. And that's part of that ripple effect that we talk about. So, you know, you're going to gather all that information and have it in front of you. But if this is a typical piece of transparent information that you share with people, don't forget to update that wherever you house that information. And watch out for overtime. So talking about overtime is where you will really get into trouble, because just that little bit of the increase may not have as big of an impact. The overtime can. So I did just a quick example. If you've got an employee who works 10 hours of overtime at that $10 an hour rate, we're talking about the weekly number of $550. So the regular wage, 40 hours, comes to $400. The overtime paid at time and a half over 40 is another $150. And so that's $550 for one individual who worked 50 hours in the week. If you have two employees who work 25 hours each at that $10 rate, it's a $500 wage for the week. So you've got a $50 difference here. And this doesn't have to be two employees at 25 each. It could be one at 35 and one at 15. You know, you've got room here, but the critical piece is no one works overtime. So in this example, you've got $50, which doesn't sound like a lot, for one person in 1 week of overtime dollars, right? So now let's multiply that. Let's say 10 people do that in the week. That's $500 in 1 week. And you can do the math. We're at 26,000 by the end of the year. And so that's where you really start to have an issue, is that overtime number. Now let's do this same formula for $15 an hour. That number, this year number, is 39,000. So pay close attention to overtime. This will be money saved. And how do you manage that? How do you deal with the overtime number? Well, if somebody works overtime, I know I have people who say, can I write my policy that says if the overtime wasn't authorized, you don't get the overtime pay? No, you cannot do that. If somebody works overtime, authorized or not, you have to pay it. You have to pay it at time and a half. But what you can do is have a disciplinary discussion about it. So if somebody works overtime that wasn't authorized, you can have the conversation that says, you know, you are not allowed to do that. We've had this discussion. Make sure you notify us before you reach overtime. Whatever the conversation is, tie it to policies that you have and the performance itself, but you cannot opt out of paying it under any circumstances. So it's better to manage it on the front side. So you either hire more people, give them lower hours, or carefully manage. Make sure you're scheduling people for 32 to 35 hours, so that gives you some leeway. Set the expectation. The hours are 35 hours a week or 36 hours a week, and make sure you don't go over that number. Does this make sense? Any questions about overtime?
Rachel, it's funny. And this is such a, you're doing a great job talking about it. Something that's a very touchy subject, I think, for a lot of people in terms of how to manage this, because part of my gut reaction is, and maybe this is just because small business is so personal to a lot of people. Your employees become your family, and reduction of hours sometimes can lead to loss of other benefits like healthcare and things of that nature. So I think going back to your slide a couple slides ago, sitting down and really doing the calculus on it now is so important, to have an understanding of what it would look like, especially because part of that retention piece is offering those benefits to your employees, whether that be 401ks or healthcare or things of that nature, right? So that this slide even underscores the importance of doing that math now to understand how you can continue to offer those competitive benefits from a retention perspective as well.
That's right. I love that point, and that's exactly why we have to have this conversation. And so, and I know that people, I know that a lot of businesses have thresholds for full-time paid benefits and benefit eligibility. So when you know that, again, if you've got it set for 30 hours to receive the benefit package, then you've got a window there to keep people from going over the 40 number. If your threshold for receiving benefits at your organization is a higher threshold, then schedule those hours that way so that people meet your threshold for benefits, but still don't go over the 40 number. And then what you could do if you have to make, again, take a look at it, see what you're dealing with, look at your times, look at the normal work schedule for somebody. And maybe people are trying to get overtime because they need more money. And if they get more pay, they may not push for the overtime number as often, or you may not have to even say that. I know some people out there say it's going to be 40 hours and they guarantee you 5 hours of overtime each week, knowing that that's a little bit of extra money for them. So factor that in. If you know that you can look at your weekly pay and see if you typically have 20 hours of overtime in the pay cycle, then look for that somewhere else. So if you have everybody scheduled not to work more than 40 hours, add one part-time person who will work 20 hours a week, and then make up the work with a part-time person who, you're not affecting any of your current people and their benefit levels, and you're adding a part-time person who wouldn't be eligible for the benefit levels. So you have some things you can do to kind of play with your hours to get the work covered without the extra overtime, because the overtime could be a much greater impact over the course of a year than you think it's going to be. And so you have to do that math. You have to do it based on what you have on a normal basis. How many hours a week does it take to get the work done? And what people are doing that work in that window of time? And be prepared for it ahead of time so you can protect yourself. And you know what? This is a good exercise to do even if you're not increasing your wages. Let's say you're already up in a high number and you don't have to make these changes now. Do this math anyway, because you may find some places where you can kind of clean up your processes and make a difference for your business by saving some of these dollars. I love it. I love it when we can use math to solve the problems. It's my favorite. Okay, so step 4. Now, these are just some other things. You've already done the big stuff. You've figured out what it looks like for your organization. You've analyzed all of your expenses. You've done you've taken the steps to make the changes you need to do. And these are just a few straggler things that you may not think of that you really want to make sure you do. There will be a new wage and hour poster required for the state of Florida. It will probably be available on the state's website. It's not something that you need to go pay for or buy. You can download the new poster, just make sure it's available for your employees, and it will have the new minimum wage numbers and the timeline. So just find that new required poster on the state site, or even ask me for it. I can shoot a link over to you guys, or make sure Katie has the link for it. And you just download it. And just a little sidebar on the required posters. I know there are a lot of people out there who scare you into thinking you need this giant laminated, beautiful poster hanging in your break room. You don't have to have that. You can get all of the required posters for free on the DOL site. And what I tell people is print them, laminate them, stick a ring, one of those binder rings in the corner of it, and then clip them all together and hang it on a clip in your break room or next to the clock. All of those need to be available for the employees to see whenever they want to see them. You don't have to pay for a big fancy sign. Just a little extra dollar saver for you in the back of your mind. So update any active job postings that you might have, either, if you want to take the job postings down, or make sure you go back in there, update job descriptions if you changed them, if you have the wage in there for the postings. Just don't forget about job postings that might be out there once we cross over this change, or once you make the change in your organization. Update your work comp info, including a light duty statement. A lot of people have in their safety policies and in your policy manual statement about work comp and light duty, and the pay rate for light duty would have to be the minimum wage as well. So change any of that language and information that you've got out there. And then also take a look at your insurance policy. So your life insurance numbers, your short-term, long-term disability numbers, your AD&D, and see if you need to adjust the numbers to reflect the difference, because most of those are based on the wages. So you want to take a look at those and see if you need to make some adjustments to the wages, in particular if you pay for life insurance and short-term disability for your folks. These are places that we typically see organizations paying for them, but you'll have to up your amounts there, or take a look at the policy and make sure it matches. How are we doing? Does anybody have any questions?
I don't see anything yet in the chat window, but please, anyone that has a question, feel free to drop that in your chat window as well.
And just to kind of go back through it, don't think of it as a negative. There are actually a lot of really nice pros and benefits that come out of this. If you just think, oh my gosh, it's a huge amount of money, it's going to be a hard hit, then it may not be. Go back through these steps and take a look at what the real numbers can look like, and where you can trade those dollars, and see that it's probably not going to be that bad. And then the benefits and the byproducts are going to outweigh it by so much, especially if you can reduce your turnover and retain those good employees. You will definitely come out on top. 3 months goes fast, so start working on this now. A lot of this stuff is going to take you a little bit of time, and some of you may have to figure out where to find all this information. So start now. It's going to go fast. You want to be ready for it. If you need any help, Certipay is here for you. We can help you with some of this stuff, or get help from somebody. Maybe your accountant can help you, or your CPA. You can communicate with each other and see, what each of you is doing to make some of these changes. And I'm sure Katie has some other good resources for you through the chamber. So get help when you need it on this. This is a good one, and it's something that you want to be prepared for. No questions?
Hi, Rachel. Hi, Rachel. This is Rose with Career Source Pro. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Rose.
Hi. Can you talk about the my coworker and I were just discussing going to McDonald's and using the automated order system, and I just thought of it. Can you discuss how companies can still maintain their customer service while with this I believe it's going to increase automation now from McDonald's to Walmart to even the gas stations. Can you discuss um, how employers can, maintain or increase their customer service? Because that could be
Yes.
affected with this change.
Yes, I love this question, Rose. And I can give you two examples of kind of the right way and the wrong way, and some examples of where it is in life, in our normal lives, where I can see this working. So let's do the wrong way. So the wrong way is just automate everything and throw your customers through it so that it's just DIY. And what that does, to your point, 100%, is now your customer is a little bit disengaged and you don't have that human touch that we all need. So slamming somebody through exclusive technology is not the way to do it. Having a hybrid, this would be the right way. And so I can first think of Costco. If you guys have been in Costco lately, they have a huge section where you check yourself out and you go through. But they don't just say, hey, go check yourself out. They have people who work in that section. Now there's 6 registers in that check yourself out section, but there are 2 to 3 employees who work in the section, and they come over and they're like, hey, how are you? Let me get you signed in. I mean, they really keep that moving and keep you engaged and work with you in the process. It works great. And so they've gone from 6 cashiers to 3, basically. They've added that automation. They have 3 employees keeping the customers engaged, and they keep people moving through the process. Same thing at Walmart. Walmart has added that huge section where you kind of snake through, and they have like 10 DIY registers, but they have employees working in that section. They do things that help you scan, they get you checked in, they move you through the line, tell you where to go, answer questions. They do a job with keeping you engaged, but at the same time moving people fast through the checkout. So I love your point, because we need that connection piece, and we especially want to keep that connection with our clients and our customers. But adding automation to streamline the process and move the process along, it's going to save money. And adding that engagement piece is the way to do it.
Thank you. I have another question. I'm sorry, Rachel. And also, we have a lot of small mom and pops in Polk County. And what if they can't keep their doors open, and with this minimum wage increase have to now decrease their staff? What options or what can you suggest that they do? And for example, maybe going down to part-time, or trying to avoid a layoff, basically for additional employees.
Yeah, I think those are the exact people that need to start with the budget, prepare a budget, and see how many people are we talking about? What is the dollar increase total that they will see per pay cycle, per month, quarter, whatever it is? And so start with the very beginning and figure out what the increase is going to look like. So if they've got 4 employees who are going to go from $9 to $10, so you've got those dollars plus how many people need to go from $9.50 to $10.50 or to $10.25. So figure out the exact dollar amount that they're talking about, and then go through the steps. So that's step 1. Figure out the budget amount. What do the dollars look like? And then go to the expenses. Go through the expenses and find those dollars. And then you can trade it dollar for dollar, and you do not need to close your doors. I am sure you have those dollars available in your expense list. You just have to dig. Go find out where they are. Can you change a technology process? Can you outsource your payroll instead of spending a high dollar amount monthly for payroll? Can you add some technology piece that will save you the amount of money you need? And maybe you need to save $1,000 in this category, $1,000 here, and $1,000 here to pay for the difference, but find it. It's in there. You just have to do a little bit of digging. Maybe you have some turnover numbers. Maybe you've got 40 or 50% turnover in a particular department. Figure out why. If you can stop the turnover, you're going to save yourself 10 times more than the difference you're paying in wages. So take a look at these numbers with a magnifying glass and find the dollars. You do not have to close. It's there. And if you can hang on for sure until we get past the initial bump where you start to see the difference in the economy turning, where now whatever your product is, whatever your service is, people are going to be looking for it. So go find those dollars to balance you out and at least keep you at a zero net change. Then you're going to see the increase because of the economy difference.
So Rose, and just to kind of add on a little bit to your questions, and you and I work in similar industries circles, so we hear a lot from, and you hear it from the employee side, but also the employer side, as I do. So to the question of automation, most people in our industry feel like this was an accelerant to automation that was already going to happen anyway. And frankly, COVID was the lighter fluid to that. So there was a lot of acceleration to what was already going to happen when it came to automation. I also think, to Rachel's point, the customer service piece of it, just like any company, if you go to, let's say Chick-fil-A versus another restaurant, Chick-fil-A's customer service, all the jokes go around about, well, if Chick-fil-A had run the vaccine distribution, everyone would be vaccinated, whatever it is. But, Chick-fil-A should run our government because they can figure things out pretty efficiently, when it comes to their customer service side. So businesses are going to have to make decisions on whether that customer service premium and the loyalty that creates, that's a unique selling proposition for that business to a certain extent, because your fear is my fear, that they go to automation and you lose that edge of customer service. I mean, when it comes to McDonald's, at least our local McDonald's that's chamber members, customer service is such a huge piece of their product formula for our local McDonald's franchise. So this is all a calculus and a formula of what they're having to do when it comes to that. And one other thing that's happening right now in our environment that I think is making a lot of businesses go through this calculus early is the unemployment discussion. And as the members on our call know, I sent out a survey last week, and information was sent to the governor this week on real life stories of what's happening, because there is a for wanted sign or help wanted sign in a lot of windows right now in our community.
Yeah.
And people are trying to hire. So we're starting to see a lot of what Rachel talked about on this call, unrelated to the increase in minimum wage in September, but having to do with the need to compete with unemployment right now, and getting people back to work in a quicker position if they're able to come back to work. So we're seeing things like signing bonuses. We're seeing things like increasing the number of maybe part-time employees to full-time employees with benefits, because of course on unemployment, you don't have healthcare. So if healthcare for you or your family is a selling point, increasing the number of positions that offer benefits to compete with that. So it's weird that we're talking about this thing happening in September, but a lot of those things our small business community is having to think about now because of this weird environment we're in, this weird post-COVID environment that we're in. But it's just, to Rose's point, it peels back so many layers of an onion, and a lot of these questions
Right.
we are hearing about, I don't want to lay off people, but I'm going to be forced to, and how do I do that? And these types of things.
Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of fear right now too. People are thinking, oh my gosh, as soon as the wages go up, I'm done for. But, it's not the case, because you can find it. You don't have to do that. And if you don't do your homework and you just do the rate changes, then you may have issues. But if you go through these steps and you take the time now, then you can find that balance so that you can keep everybody.
And then also looking at one thing we've heard from our businesses is looking at vacant positions right now through this formula and determining whether you are going to hire for those vacant positions, instead of looking at just the now, but looking at the long term on how this might impact. But that goes back to your job description point, Rachel, and looking at what your org chart looks like and how those positions are.
That's right.
Because certainly attrition or not filling is one way to not impact your current workforce that is working
Right.
for you.
And to that point too, if you have a vacant position, you might go look at the tasks, do that analysis about what are the tasks included in that. Can you distribute those to existing people? And then hang on, don't add a person until you see the change in your business, where you see an uptick in, demand. And so if you can absorb those tasks somewhere else in the meantime, and then add a position later, that's one way to, position yourself.
And I do want to give a shout out to everyone on the phone. Thank you for logging on today. If you have best practices that you're hearing about how people are contending with this or planning ahead, please share those with us. I think we're going to get a lot of questions. And of course, as Rachel said, 3 months goes very fast. So we're wanting to talk about this to get businesses to start preparing. And not just because we have a known in terms of what the state is doing, but we also have this unknown. And I'm not going to put Rachel on the spot to give a crystal ball on what's going to happen on the federal level, but we have this unknown on the federal level as well. So whether that if something like this passes at the federal level, whether that's also phased in like they did in Florida, or what that might look like at the federal level as well. So I think this is just may feel like a painful process, but it's a process that all businesses need to go through now, no matter your size, to understand what the impact of this will have, both from our known as well as what could happen on the federal level.
That's right. And well, I am a Pisces, so I'm not afraid to make comments about seeing into the crystal ball.
And I think
and I can say,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Okay, and I think also you're right, Rachel. It's about preparation. We prepare just for anything in life, whether it's having a new baby or a hurricane season. So the more prepared you are, the better you are to handle this. It will be some bumpy roads along the way, but that's expected when it comes to change. But I really like this presentation that you're giving to the employers and letting them kind of understand and know, and especially the steps process, because sometimes it's the smaller businesses don't have a team that can help with preparation. So I really, really, really appreciate that you have this for us.
Absolutely. And I do foresee the federal minimum wage following suit at some point. Now, what we know about our federal government is the pace is almost always slower than we think it's going to be. So, while I do think a change will happen, I don't think it's going to be, anytime soon. I think there's a lot going on right now, so that, when they start to make changes to the minimum wage, it'll be a little bit down the road, but I do think we're all gonna end up around the same place.
Well, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for giving this presentation today. And we will, We are recording, so this portion will go up on YouTube. So if you missed anything today, or we had a couple people sign in a little bit into the presentation, this will be up on YouTube. And I'm probably going to have my intern also make this a blog post as well, so that people can reference it there as well. I think this is great information that we can all use for our businesses, but as well as our fellow community members that might be worried about how they're going to implement this into their portfolio for this next year for their business. So again, thank you all so much. Rachel, thank you once again for stepping up and putting together this great information for us, and to our partners at Certipay. You're allowed to make a shameless plug, because you guys have done so much for us over the course of the last year, but they've been doing a lot. Certipay is our payroll processor here at the chamber, and has helped us get through this year and understanding everything so well. So thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you so much to everyone that jumped on the call today. And if you think of anything later that you've got a question about, just feel free to shoot me an email at katie@winterhavenchamber.com, and I'll be glad to get an answer for you. So
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. Bye, everybody.